I'm 38 years old and I always try to see the good in everyone. I really do, especially family. Maybe that's my weakness, my fatal flaw, because it's why I defended Damien for years. Damien, my nephew, 22, and a black hole of need. People started whispering about him a long time ago. Entitled, they'd say. Dramatic. I always brushed it off. He was young, finding his way, right? Besides, I practically raised him. My brother, Kevin, a single dad at 45, was always stretched thin. Since we were tight, I was there, babysitting, helping with school, even bailing them out financially when things got tight. I never imagined I'd be the one needing protection. From Damien, it started subtly, a pinprick of unease. A random Facebook message from my cousin Giselle, 50, always bubbly and effusive. So glad I could help Damien with his surgery. Hope he's recovering well. Surgery? What surgery? I hadn't given Damien a dime, let alone for something that serious. My first thought was mistaken identity. Maybe she had me confused with someone else. But the more I read, the more a cold dread started to creep in. She genuinely believed I had asked her for money. The message even mentioned an exchange where I supposedly vouched for Damien's situation. Before I could even begin to untangle that knot of confusion and disbelief, another blow landed a week later. Uncle Leo, 63, gruff but with a soft spot, called me casually. Just wanted to say, felt bad Damien was struggling, hope the 500 helped. 500? What the hell was going on? He explained he sent it to Damien after getting a message from me, saying Damien was in trouble. My stomach dropped. That was 2 people. Both convinced I had personally reached out asking them to send money to Damien. I started frantically checking with other relatives, a desperate hunt for an explanation. It didn't take long to uncover a pattern, a sickening, horrifying pattern. Within days, 3 more family members confirmed they had sent Damien money. Messages from me, some through text, some through email, one even through a direct message on Facebook from an account bearing my name. Each story was a variation on the same lie. Damien needed help with rent. He was drowning in medical debt. He'd been scammed himself and needed a way out. The end result was the same, money sent, me completely clueless. Then it hit me, a cold wave crashing over me. Damien was impersonating me. He was using my name to scam family members. And judging by how many had already fallen for it, he'd been doing it for months. Months! I dove deeper, a desperate excavation of betrayal. It got worse, so much worse. Damien wasn't just asking for money. He had set up fake email accounts, using variations of my name, created a spoofed phone number to send texts, even built a fake Facebook profile pretending to be me. Through this web of lies he had stolen. How much? I had to tally it. Over $5,000, at least 6 people. In the last 3 months, the numbers felt like a physical blow. I had no idea how far this had gone, if there were more victims out there, still silent, trusting. My first instinct was to go to Kevin. He was Damien's father. He had to know. Surely he'd want to know what his son was up to, right? But when I confronted him, he barely let me finish before shutting me down. Damien would never do that, he insisted, his voice tight, defensive. He refused to believe it. Someone must be setting Damien up. Or maybe it was some kind of miscommunication. I showed him the proof, the fake emails, the spoofed numbers, the confirmed transactions. He waved it off. Damien isn't a liar, he said, his eyes hard. If he needed help, he would have asked directly. I walked away, a bitter taste in my mouth. I expected at least some resistance from Damien, but I didn't expect him to go straight into damage control. Less than an hour after speaking with Kevin, I got a call. Uncle Alex? Damien's voice, all innocence and confusion. He sounded completely blindsided, offended even, that I would accuse him of something so awful. He kept insisting he had no idea how this could have happened, even as I laid out the evidence. Piece by piece, Then he shifted tactics. Guilt. You're ruining my reputation, he said, his voice cracking, over what's clearly some kind of misunderstanding. I pushed harder. His story changed again. He admitted he might have borrowed my name in one or two situations, but only to help a friend get a loan. He even tried to laugh it off, like it was no big deal. I wasn't buying it. Not for a second. He'd gotten away with this for months, and I wasn't about to let him talk his way out of it. I needed undeniable proof, something so solid that neither he nor Kevin could deny what he had done. That's when the idea hit me. I was going to set a trap. I reached out to James, 39, sharp, quick-witted, and someone Damien didn't know well. I needed an outsider, someone untainted by our family drama. I need your help, I told him, laying out the whole sordid story. I need you to pretend to be another relative, willing to help Damien. James didn't hesitate. Consider me your accomplice, he said, a grim smile in his voice. The plan was simple. James would send a message to the fake me, the one Damien had created. He would offer money. We'd see where it ended up. If Damien took the bait, we'd have all the proof we needed. Solid, irrefutable proof. I didn't tell anyone else what I was doing. The last thing I needed was for word to get back to Damien, to give him a chance to cover his tracks, to weasel his way out of it. I deleted the texts and emails, cleared my browser history. Instead, I sat back, a knot of anxiety tightening in my chest, and waited. I knew it was only a matter of time before he walked right into the trap. I just didn't realize how deep this whole damn thing really went. James didn't even have to wait an hour. As soon as he sent a message to the fake me, Damien took the bait like a fish, hooked on a line, wriggling and desperate. The message was simple. James, pretending to be a distant relative, said he'd heard about Damien's financial struggles and wanted to help. He asked where to send the money and if it would be enough to get Damien back on his feet. Not even 20 minutes later, James received a response. A long, dramatic outpouring of woe. I, aka Damien, poured my heart out, talking about how desperate I was. My landlord was threatening to kick me out. My bills were piling up. I had nowhere else to turn. It was almost impressive, the speed with which he spun the sob story. It was all a lie. Then came the most important part. Damien sent over a bank account number, an account number that traced directly back to him. But the lies didn't stop there. To really sell the story, Damien added another layer. He claimed that I, his uncle, the real me, was actually the one who needed the help, but I was too embarrassed to ask for money directly. According to Damien, I had begged him to reach out to family members on my behalf, but I was too ashamed to tell them the truth myself. He even sent James fake screenshots of a supposed text exchange between us. In the messages, I had supposedly written things like, "Please don't tell anyone. I don't want them to think I'm struggling." The level of manipulation was honestly shocking. The lengths this kid would go. James played along, responding with feigned concern and readiness to help. But he asked a simple question, should I check with Alex first? That's when Damien started panicking. He immediately shut down the idea, insisting that I would be mortified if anyone found out. He made it sound like I was on the verge of an emotional breakdown over this. He even added that I had personally told him not to let anyone else know because I was afraid of being judged. He needed the money quickly. He didn't want to drag this out. That was all the confirmation I needed. I didn't want to wait any longer. To make sure there was a clear money trail, James sent a small test deposit of $5 to Damien's account. The moment it went through, I had undeniable proof that Damien was running the scam. I didn't waste any time. I called Damien immediately. When he answered, his voice was light, casual. He had no idea what was coming. "Damien, what's this about James sending you money?" I asked, keeping my voice calm, even. At first, he played dumb, acted completely confused, as if he had no clue what I was talking about. I repeated myself, asked him again why James had just sent him money. That's when Damien's carefully constructed lie started to crumble. He stammered something about helping a friend, that it must be a mix-up. I let him talk himself into a corner before dropping the bomb. I have proof, Damien. Not just the bank transfer, but screenshots, messages, and multiple witnesses who confirm you've scammed them the same way. The moment I said the word proof, the entire tone of the conversation shifted. Damien went silent. Then, out of nowhere, he burst into tears. He started sobbing so loudly that for a second I thought he had hung up the phone. He kept saying he was scared, that he didn't know how to stop, that he felt trapped. It was a full meltdown, as if he had suddenly become the victim in all of this. Then he switched tactics. Instead of admitting fault, he tried shifting the blame. He claimed he had only used my name once or twice, as a favor for a friend. This, despite the evidence showing that he had created fake emails, phone numbers, and even fabricated entire conversations. The level of effort he put in made it clear this wasn't some impulsive mistake. It was a well-planned, calculated scam. When I asked for this friend's name, Damien suddenly couldn't remember. Before I could press him further, Kevin stormed in. I could hear him in the background, demanding to know what was going on. The second he realized what we were talking about, he went on the defensive. He insisted there had to be a mistake, that Damien would never do something like this. He even accused me of being too harsh, saying Damien was just a kid who must have gotten confused. I wasn't having it. I started listing off every single relative Damien had scammed, and exactly how much he had taken from them. As I went down the list, Kevin's excuses started to fall apart. There was no way this was some innocent mistake. This was calculated, deliberate, and now Damien was caught. At this point, Damien was done pretending. He stopped denying everything and switched to minimizing. He admitted he had maybe taken some money, but acted like it wasn't a big deal. He said he planned to pay everyone back, and that the situation had just gotten out of hand. I gave him an ultimatum. He had one chance to return every cent he had stolen. If he didn't, I would go public. I would tell every single family member exactly what he had done. I would make sure everyone knew he was a scammer. Damien was still sniffling, but I could tell he was weighing his options. Kevin, on the other hand, was furious. Not at Damien, but at me. He accused me of turning the family against his son, of blowing things out of proportion, of being cruel for not handling this privately. What neither of them realized was that I had already contacted some of the relatives Damien had scammed. They were furious, and unlike Kevin, they weren't going to defend Damien. They wanted their money back, and they wanted it now. Damien had lost control of the situation. He had no idea what was coming next. The fallout was immediate. Within minutes of me confronting Damien, the family group chat erupted like a volcano. It started with Uncle Leo, who wasn't interested in excuses. He demanded his $500 back right away and refused to hear anything about misunderstandings or mistakes. Giselle jumped in next, confirming that Damien had taken money from her as well. And then another cousin mentioned she had also been tricked. One after another, people started tallying up how much Damien had scammed from them. It wasn't just 6 people. It was closer to 10. The total amount was now well over $7,000. The chat was moving so fast it was impossible to keep up. Some relatives were furious. Some were just shocked, still trying to make sense of how Damien had managed to pull this off. Kevin, of course, jumped in to defend his son. He started off by saying Damien was just a kid who had made a stupid mistake. He claimed Damien never meant any harm, and that he probably just got over his head. But nobody was buying it. The sheer amount of planning that had gone into the scam, the fake messages, the spoofed emails, and even the fake text conversations, made it clear this wasn't just some innocent accident. Damien, who had been completely silent up until this point, finally sent a message. But it was barely an apology, just a short, vague note saying he was sorry for any confusion and that he never intended to upset anyone. He didn't admit to anything. He didn't promise to pay anyone back. He didn't even explain himself. That only made things worse. Uncle Leo called him out instantly, saying this wasn't confusion, this was theft. Other relatives started pressing Damien for real answers. How did he think this was okay? What was he planning to do with the money? Why did he lie to so many people? Damien didn't respond. Instead, Kevin doubled down. He told everyone that shaming Damien like this wouldn't fix anything, that they were ruining his chances of learning from his mistake. He even tried to shift the blame onto me, saying I was stirring up drama instead of handling things privately. That's when Damien made his next mistake. Instead of facing the group, he messaged me privately. This time, he wasn't crying or making excuses. He was begging. He asked me to cover for him. He said if I just told the family it was all a misunderstanding, he would pay me back in secret. He even tried to guilt me, saying if I didn't help him, he would be completely ruined. I wasn't falling for it. I told him I'd only consider it if he paid back every single person first. No more fake apologies. No more lies. Just return the money. He didn't reply. A few minutes later, one of my cousins announced that they had reported Damien's scam to the bank. That's when the real panic started. Damien's account was flagged for suspicious activity, and within a few days, his bank began reviewing his transactions. While they didn't freeze his funds immediately, they restricted withdrawals while the fraud investigation was underway. That was the moment Damien realized this wasn't just going to go away. Kevin went into full meltdown mode. He started calling relatives, begging them to drop it before Damien got into real trouble. He claimed Damien didn't deserve to have his life ruined over a few bad decisions. He even tried to downplay it, insisting Damien wasn't a criminal and that we were taking things too far. But by this point, nobody was listening. Instead of siding with Kevin, the family held firm. Damien had stolen thousands, lied repeatedly, and refused to make things right. Nobody was backing down. Then, for the first time in weeks, Damien resurfaced. He posted a weak apology in the group chat, saying he was sorry for any stress he had caused and that he never meant to hurt anyone. It was obvious he was only apologizing because he had been caught. He still didn't admit to anything, and he definitely didn't promise to return the money. When people started demanding real answers, he switched tactics again. This time, he blamed stress and not knowing how to ask for help. He claimed he wasn't thinking straight, and that things had spiraled out of control. It was a long-winded way of saying nothing at all. When pressed about repaying the money, Damien made yet another excuse. He said he was working on it but needed more time. He even suggested setting up a payment plan, saying he could pay everyone back slowly over the next few years. Nobody was buying it. I told Damien that if he was actually sorry, he could start by paying back at least one person immediately. Just one? He ignored me. The detective called Damien again. This time, it wasn't a polite request. It was a firm reminder that he needed to give a statement, and if he kept dodging things would only get worse for him. That's when Kevin made one final desperate move. He approached one of our uncles, one of the quieter family members who had lost money, and tried to cut a deal. He offered to pay back just his money if he agreed to drop the case. He probably thought it was a smart move, that if he could get at least one person to back down, maybe the others would follow. It didn't work. The uncle refused and told the rest of us what Kevin was trying to do. At this point, Damien had no more options. The bank had already frozen his funds once, but now, with an active police investigation underway, his account was permanently locked. He couldn't access what was left of the money, and he had no way of running from the situation anymore. He finally started repaying people, but only partially. He sent small amounts back to some relatives, clearly trying to show that he was making an effort, but it was too little, too late. The damage was done. Even after avoiding actual criminal charges, Damien's reputation was completely ruined. Nobody in the family wanted anything to do with him anymore. He wasn't just a liar. He was a scammer, and everybody knew it. Kevin once again tried to shift the blame. He claimed the family had destroyed Damien's future, that we had turned our backs on him instead of helping him. But nobody felt guilty. Damien had done this to himself. With nowhere left to turn, Damien disappeared from family events, group chats, and social media. He went from being the center of family drama to being completely irrelevant. And honestly, that was the best outcome he could have hoped for. Damien stayed silent for a while after everything went down. With his bank account locked, his reputation in ruins, and nobody left to manipulate, he had no choice but to lay low. He stopped responding to family members, avoided social media, and completely disappeared from any group chats. It was like he thought if he just waited long enough, people would forget what he had done. They didn't. The damage he had caused was permanent. Nobody was willing to give him another chance. Nobody offered to help him. The family had made it clear Damien was on his own now. It wasn't just the family either. Word spread fast, and even distant relatives who hadn't been directly involved wanted nothing to do with him. When someone scams their own family, people remember. Every time his name came up, it was attached to one thing: the scammer. Finding a job wasn't easy for him either. Someone, not me, had posted about his scam on Facebook. It wasn't a public post, just a warning in a private group that many of our extended relatives were part of. But that was enough. Every time Damien applied somewhere, all it took was a quick online search for potential employers to see the discussions. Nobody wanted to hire someone with fraud attached to their name. That's when Kevin decided to step in. Kevin, still in full Damien did nothing wrong mode, thought the family just needed one good dinner to fix everything. He invited everyone over, claiming it was a family gathering meant to heal and move forward. Nobody showed up. Well, 2 people did, one cousin and an uncle, and they didn't come to forgive Damien. They came to tell Kevin to his face that nobody was interested in playing along with his delusions. They told him that trust wasn't something that could be rebuilt over a cheap dinner. Damien had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. Damien's problems didn't stop at the family. A few of his friends found out what happened and cut him off too. It turned out that one of them had also been asked for money months ago, but she hadn't said anything at the time. Now that she knew the full story, she wanted nothing to do with Damien. Another friend, one of the few who had actually supported Damien through all of this, finally had enough and told him they couldn't keep defending him. With his support system collapsing, Damien was running out of options. That's when he made his last desperate move. He reached out to me. He didn't come at me with excuses this time. No blaming stress, no fake victim act. Instead, he sent a long-winded message claiming that he finally understood what he did wrong. He said he had learned his lesson and wanted one last chance to make things right. I wasn't interested. I told him he had already been given plenty of chances. He had every opportunity to do the right thing, and he chose to lie, manipulate, and steal instead. He wasn't sorry. He was just desperate. After I shut him down, Kevin jumped in for one last guilt trip. He accused me of turning the family against Damien and ruining his life. He kept going on about how Damien wouldn't be struggling this much if we had just forgiven him. I shut that down fast. I reminded Kevin that Damien ruined his own life. Nobody forced him to scam people. Nobody made him lie. Everything that happened was because of his own choices. Damien must have realized he wasn't going to get what he wanted because he blocked me again. This time, he made sure to block me on everything. Last I heard, he had managed to get a minimum wage retail job. That was the best he could do, considering nobody else wanted to hire him. And honestly, I don't feel bad. Damien had every opportunity to make things right, and he refused. Now he's finally facing real consequences, and I've moved on completely. No guilt, no regrets. Damien is finally out of my life for good. Damien had lost everything: his family's trust, his reputation, and even his job security. But if there was one thing I learned about him, it was that he never truly gave up on a scam. He just adjusted his tactics. A few months after he disappeared from the family, Damien reappeared online with a brand new Instagram account. He had rebranded himself as a self-made entrepreneur. His bio was full of motivational quotes about rising above the haters, starting from nothing, and proving everyone wrong. He posted about self-growth and not letting the past define you. He conveniently left out the part where his past included scamming his own family out of thousands of dollars. It didn't take long to figure out what he was really doing. Damien had launched a new business and was desperately trying to recruit people. At first, he made it seem like he had started an online store. He posted flashy stock images of beauty products, home gadgets, and fitness supplements, acting like he was running a successful e-commerce company. But it was all fake. Within a week, it became obvious he was part of an MLM, a multi-level marketing scheme. He wasn't selling anything himself. He was trying to recruit people to sell for him. The more people he convinced to join under him, the more commission he would make. And guess who he tried to recruit first? The family. Damien started DMing relatives, pitching his amazing business opportunity. He talked about financial freedom and building your own empire. He sent long-winded messages about taking control of your life and investing in yourself. The best part? He promised that anyone who joined would get exclusive mentorship from him. Nobody fell for it. The same people he had scammed were not about to hand him more money. Some ignored him completely. Others flat out told him they weren't interested. A few even called him out directly, reminding him that he had just stolen from the family, and now he was trying to recruit them into another scheme. Damien didn't take the rejection well. He quickly changed tactics. Instead of pushing the business, he started playing the victim. He claimed he was being unfairly blacklisted by the family, and that nobody wanted to see him succeed. He started posting vague Instagram stories about jealous people, trying to hold him back, and toxic relatives who refused to move on. Kevin jumped in right on cue. He started privately messaging people, saying that Damien was trying to turn his life around and that the family needed to stop holding the past against him. He claimed Damien was finally making something of himself and just needed a little to get back on his feet. For the first time, nobody took the bait. Even the more forgiving relatives, the ones who had previously told me to let it go, ignored Kevin's pleas. They were done. That's when Damien got truly desperate. After his business flopped and the family ignored him, Damien disappeared for a few weeks before reappearing online with a new scheme. If the previous MLMs and sob stories weren't enough to bring in some suckers, he would find something else, even if it meant taking it from the desperate. At first, he tried recruiting for an MLM, but when that failed, he pivoted to job scams, using a different name to lure in unsuspecting applicants. The shift happened so quickly that it was clear he had no intention of actually changing, just adapting his scams to new victims. This time, no matter how hard he tried to hide, he wanted some sympathy from those close to him. He posted on social media with all the lights off. It was a text-only post saying things like, "I'm so tired. Nobody cares anyway. And what's the point of trying anymore?" A few relatives reached out, worried that he was in real distress. Others immediately recognized it for what it was, another manipulation tactic. Kevin, of course, took it a step further. He posted an entire rant on Facebook blaming the family for pushing Damien to the edge. He claimed we had bullied him, ruined his life, and forced him into this state. He demanded that people show his son compassion instead of judgment. It backfired spectacularly. Instead of sympathy, the comments were full of people reminding Kevin that Damien had scammed his own family. Some even pointed out that Kevin had spent months defending Damien instead of holding him accountable. Even a few of his own friends asked why he was acting like Damien was the victim in all of this. Kevin deleted the post within a few hours. Then, suddenly, Damien was gone. Within days, he deleted his Instagram, his Facebook, and even his LinkedIn profile. Every trace of his business disappeared. The MLM scam, the motivational posts, the victim act, it was all wiped clean. Kevin, who had spent months defending him, also went silent. He stopped reaching out to people, stopped trying to guilt-trip the family, and just faded into the background. For the first time in what felt like forever, there was no more drama, no more lies, no more scams. I thought it was finally over, but Damien wasn't done just yet. Damien had been silent for months. No Instagram, no Facebook, no MLM scams. For the first time in a long time, it seemed like he had finally run out of ways to manipulate people. But I should have known better. Damien wasn't the type to accept consequences. He was the type to reinvent himself and find a new way to scam people. And this time, instead of targeting family, he set his sights on complete strangers. He reappeared under a completely different name, running what looked like a job recruitment page. The posts were professionally looking, offering remote job positions with flexible hours, high salaries, and no prior experience needed. It was the kind of thing that would appeal to desperate job seekers looking for work from home opportunities. There was just one problem. It was completely fake. Damien was pretending to be a hiring manager for a prestigious company, claiming he was helping people find jobs. But to apply, candidates had to pay a small application fee to process their paperwork. The scam was simple. Damien collected money from hopeful job seekers and then disappeared, never following up with interviews or offers. He must have thought he was being clever, that nobody would recognize him under a fake name. But he underestimated just how small the internet can be. One of my friends, someone completely unrelated to the family, came across one of Damien's fake job posts. She recognized Damien's picture even though it was slightly edited. She sent me the screenshot asking, "Isn't this your scammer nephew?" It took me less than 10 minutes to confirm it was him. He had changed his name, created a brand new online persona, and wiped any traces of his past. But no matter how hard he tried to hide, he couldn't erase everything. I wasn't about to let him get away with it. I contacted the real company Damien was pretending to represent. I forwarded them screenshots of his fake job postings, along with links to the accounts he was using to run the scam. They responded quickly, confirming that Damien had zero affiliation with them and that his actions were illegal. Within days, they issued a fraud warning. Damien's entire scheme fell apart almost instantly. People who had already sent him money for application fees began reporting his accounts. Platforms like LinkedIn and Facebook flagged his posts as fraudulent. The fake job page he had worked so hard to build was removed from every platform he used. Then, for the first time, Damien faced actual legal consequences. The company he impersonated sent him a cease and desist letter, warning him that if he continued this fraud, they would pursue legal action. But it didn't stop there. A few of the job seekers he scammed reported him to the authorities. The police got involved again. Instead of fighting back, Damien did what he always did. He ran. He deleted every fake account, scrubbed any traces of the scam, and vanished from social media. That should have been the end of it. But Kevin, ever the enabler, had one last meltdown. Instead of admitting his son had committed fraud again, he had the audacity to message me. He blamed me for ruining Damien's only shot at success. He actually tried to argue that Damien had finally found a way to build a future, but that I had destroyed it out of spite. I shut him down instantly. I told him if Damien's only way to succeed is by scamming people, he deserves to fail. That was the last time Kevin ever reached out to me. The legal situation escalated quickly. At least 2 people who had sent Damien money for fake job applications followed through with fraud reports. With his previous family scam already on record, this new case didn't look good for him. Instead of sticking around to face it, Damien completely disappeared. He didn't just delete his accounts this time. He vanished from every online space he'd ever been active in. No more new businesses, no more fake opportunities. It was like he had finally realized he couldn't keep running scams forever. Kevin, for the first time, had to face reality. With Damien gone, he finally had to accept that his son wasn't a victim. He was a scammer. He had spent years defending Damien, manipulating the family, and blaming everyone else. But now there was nobody left to fight for. Kevin quietly left the family group chats. He stopped reaching out to people. The family moved on without them. No more drama, no more lies, no more excuses. Last I heard, Damien was couch surfing with a distant friend, struggling to get by. Nobody knows where he is now, and honestly, nobody cares. As far as I'm concerned, he's finally out of my life for good. It's been a full year since Damien's last scam, and honestly, life has never been better. For the first time in years, family gatherings are peaceful. There's no drama, no awkward conversations, and nobody walking on eggshells. The tension that used to hang over everything, Damien's lies, Kevin's constant enabling, the never-ending cycle of manipulation, is completely gone. It's like a weight was lifted off the entire family. Damien never bounced back after his last scam fell apart and legal trouble started closing in. He completely disappeared. No social media, no new business ventures, nothing. As far as anyone knows, he hasn't pulled any new scams either. He finally learned his lesson, or he just ran out of people to con. A distant relative ran into him recently and gave us an update. Damien was working a low-paying job, barely getting by. No flashy lifestyle, no financial freedom. Just a regular job where he couldn't scam his way to the top. It turns out that when he couldn't manipulate people anymore, he had to actually work for a living. Nobody feels bad for him. Even the more forgiving relatives, the ones who initially said, "Maybe we should give him another chance," have stopped caring. After everything he put people through, there's just no sympathy left. He burned too many bridges, and now he's on his own. Kevin, of course, still refuses to admit Damien did anything wrong. He occasionally reaches out to relatives, trying to rewrite history. He tells people that Damien just made some bad decisions, and that the family never gave him a chance to make things right. It's the same story he's been pushing for years, but now nobody is listening. Kevin's reputation is completely destroyed. People don't trust him anymore, not just because of Damien, but because of how far he went to defend him. He spent years enabling his son's scams, lying for him, and attacking anyone who tried to hold Damien accountable. Now he's paying the price for it. He still tries to play the victim sometimes, acting like he was wronged by the family, but it never goes anywhere. Whenever he brings up Damien, the conversation dies instantly. Nobody wants to hear it. As for me, I've completely cut them off. I haven't spoken to either of them in a year, and I have no plans to. No more messages, no more family drama, no more getting dragged into their mess. Cutting them out of my life was the best decision I ever made, and I have no regrets. Without their chaos, I've been thriving both in my career and in my personal life. The time and energy I used to waste dealing with Damien's nonsense, I've put it into things that actually matter. My relationships with the rest of my family are stronger than ever. The people Damien scammed have moved on, and the trust that was broken has been restored. Looking back, if I've learned anything from this whole situation, it's that enabling toxic family members never ends well. Damien had so many chances to change, so many opportunities to fix what he had done, and he threw them all away. He made his choices, and now he's living with the consequences. And for the first time since all of this started, I feel completely at peace. Damien got exactly what he deserved. I don't wish him harm, but I also don't wish him back in my life. Ever! The silence that followed Damien's final vanishing act was profound. It wasn't just the absence of his constant drama, the ceaseless stream of lies and manipulations. It was a deeper quiet, a settling of dust after a storm. For years, our family had been caught in a whirlwind of his making, constantly reacting, constantly trying to contain the fallout. Now, finally, we were still. It wasn't a perfect stillness, of course. The scars remained. The sting of betrayal lingered. It wasn't something that could be erased, not completely. But it was a stillness that allowed healing to begin, a chance to rebuild on a foundation of honesty and trust. In the months that followed, I found myself drawn closer to the relatives Damien had wronged, not out of pity or a sense of obligation, but out of a shared experience, a bond forged in the fire of his deceit. We talked, not just about what he had done, but about how it had affected us, how it had shaken our faith in family, in human nature itself. Giselle, always effusive, surprised me with her quiet strength. She admitted that Damien's betrayal had made her question her own judgment, her own willingness to see the good in people. But she refused to let it harden her. "I won't let him steal my heart," she said, her voice firm. "I'll still be kind. I'll just be." Wiser, Uncle Leo, gruff as ever, confided that the money Damien had stolen wasn't the issue. It was the lie, the deliberate manipulation. "I helped that boy," he grumbled. "I genuinely cared. And he just used me. That's what stings." We talked about how easily we had been fooled, how Damien had exploited our trust, our willingness to believe the best in someone we considered family. We talked about the red flags we had ignored, the warning signs we had dismissed. It was a difficult conversation, a painful one, but it was necessary. We had to confront our own vulnerabilities, our own biases, if we were ever going to protect ourselves from something like this happening again. Beyond the immediate family, the ripples of Damien's actions spread further. Old wounds resurfaced, old resentments bubbled to the surface. It was as if his lies had unearthed a whole history of unspoken grievances, unresolved conflicts. There were arguments, of course. Blame was tossed around. Accusations were made. But in the end, something shifted. There was a new willingness to communicate, to address the issues that had been festering for years. It wasn't a magical transformation, not by any means. There were still disagreements, still moments of tension. But there was a new understanding, a new commitment to honesty and openness. In the midst of all this, Kevin remained a ghost, a shadow on the periphery. He had retreated into himself, isolating himself from the family, nursing his wounded pride. I wondered about him, what he was going through. Was he finally acknowledging the truth about Damien? Was he finally grappling with the consequences of his own enabling? I tried to reach out a few times, to offer a word of support, a gesture of understanding, but he rebuffed me every time. He wasn't ready to face what had happened, to confront his own role in Damien's downfall. I stopped trying. I had to prioritize my own well-being, my own healing. I couldn't save Kevin. He had to save himself. As the months passed, I started to see the ways in which Damien's actions had, paradoxically, strengthened our family. We had been tested, pushed to our limits. We had been betrayed, deceived, and disappointed. But we had survived. We had learned valuable lessons about trust, about boundaries, about the importance of holding people accountable, even when they were family. We had learned the hard way that love wasn't enough, that sometimes you had to protect yourself, even from those you cared about. We had also learned about the power of forgiveness, not in the sense of condoning what Damien had done, but in the sense of releasing the anger, the resentment, the bitterness that threatened to consume us. It wasn't easy. It took time, but slowly, gradually, we began to move on, to rebuild our lives, to reclaim our sense of peace. A year passed. Life had settled into a new normal. One without Damien's chaos, Kevin's enabling, the constant threat of deception. I had almost forgotten about them completely, relegated them to a closed chapter in my life. Then, one ordinary afternoon, I received a message. It was from an unknown number. My first instinct was to ignore it. I was wary of unknown contacts, hyper-vigilant after everything that had happened with Damien, but something about the message caught my eye. It was simple, direct, devoid of the usual manipulative tactics. "Alex, it's Damien. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I need to tell you something." My heart pounded in my chest. A wave of anxiety washed over me. What did he want? What new scheme was he cooking up? I hesitated. Should I respond? Should I just block the number and pretend I never saw it? Curiosity, or perhaps a morbid fascination, got the better of me. I typed a single word, "What?" A few seconds later, he responded, "I'm sorry. I know it doesn't mean much, not after everything I did, but I really am sorry. I understand now how much I hurt you, how much I hurt everyone." I stared at the message, incredulous. Was this real? Was this the same Damien who had lied, manipulated, and stolen his way through our lives? "What changed?" I typed, my fingers trembling slightly. "I hit rock bottom," he wrote. "I lost everything. I had nobody." I finally realized that I had nobody because of what I did, because of who I was. He went on to describe the months he had spent in the wilderness, drifting from place to place, working dead-end jobs, struggling to survive. He had no friends, no family, no support system. He was completely alone. "I started seeing a therapist," he wrote. "It's been hard, but it's helping. I'm trying to understand why I did what I did, why I was so driven to lie and manipulate people." He didn't make excuses. He didn't try to shift the blame. He just took responsibility for his actions. "I know I can never undo what I did," he wrote. "I know I can never earn back your trust, or the trust of the family. But I wanted you to know that I'm trying to change. I'm trying to be a better person." He didn't ask for anything. He didn't ask for forgiveness. He didn't ask for money. He just wanted me to know that he was sorry, that he was trying to change. I didn't know what to believe. Was this a genuine moment of self-reflection? Or was it just another elaborate manipulation, a new tactic to win me over? I decided to be cautious. I wasn't ready to forgive him. I wasn't even sure if I ever would be, but I was willing to listen. "What are you doing now?" I typed. "I'm working construction," he wrote. "It's hard work, but it's honest. I'm saving up money. I want to pay everyone back, eventually. I know it'll take a long time, but I want to make things right." I didn't respond right away. I needed time to process what he had said. I needed to sort through the conflicting emotions that were swirling inside me. I showed the messages to James. He was skeptical. "Don't fall for it," he warned. "He's probably just trying to get back into your good graces so he can scam you again." I knew James was right to be cautious. I knew I couldn't let my guard down, not for a second. But I also couldn't ignore the possibility that Damien was genuinely trying to change. After a long, sleepless night, I decided to respond. "I appreciate you reaching out," I typed. "I'm glad to hear you're getting help. But it's going to take more than words to earn back my trust, or the trust of anyone else in the family. Actions speak louder than words, Damien. Show us you've changed," he responded quickly. "I understand. I don't expect you to trust me right away. I just wanted you to know that I'm trying. I'm going to keep working, keep saving, and keep trying to make things right." And then, for the first time in a long time, I felt a glimmer of hope, a tiny spark of possibility. Maybe, just maybe, Damien was finally on the right path. It was too early to tell. There was still a long way to go. But for the first time in years, I saw a glimmer of redemption in the darkness. And that, in itself, was enough. Years have passed since that exchange. Damien never fully returned to the family fold. The scars were too deep, the trust too shattered. But he did keep his word. Slowly, painstakingly, he began repaying the money he had stolen, a little at a time, working tirelessly to make amends. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the effort, the commitment, the genuine remorse he showed. And that, in the end, was what mattered most. I don't know what the future holds for Damien. I don't know if he will ever fully escape the shadow of his past. But I do know this: he is trying. And that is all I can ask for. As for me, I have learned a valuable lesson about forgiveness, not just for others, but for myself. I have learned that it is possible to move on from even the deepest betrayals, to rebuild trust, to find peace. The serpent may have entered the garden, but the garden has not been destroyed. It has been pruned, it has been fertilized, and it has emerged stronger, more resilient, and more beautiful than ever before. The end.